Welcome everyone. My name is Clinton Oduor, and I am a senior editor at TechCabal. Welcome to Moonshot Conversations by TechCabal. I'm really happy to be here, and today we're going to spend the next 1 hour, 30 minutes talking about something really interesting that has been on everyone's table, AI, and how it works on the continent. So before I get to introducing everyone who is on the panel with me, I'm going to tell you a little bit about TechCabal, about Moonshot, and about the rundown who we are doing this event in a partnership with. So now TechCabal speaks to the business and human impact of tech in Africa, and we do it through events like this, which we partner with really insightful companies like the Rundown with. And we also do it through newsletters, we do it through reports, and we do it through high quality articles. This event is organized by the Moonshot team in partnership with Rundown. Moonshot by TechCabal is TechCabal's biggest conference that brings together Africa's tech ecosystem in person to network, collaborate, share insights, and celebrate innovation on the continent. It convenes audacious thinkers and doers building solutions to Africa's most challenging problems. The maiden edition happened last year, and this year it will be happening at Eco Convention Center in Lagos, Nigeria on October 9th and 10th. There's going to be a link in the chat box. My colleague, Victoria Olon, will drop a link for you to learn more about Moonshots by TechCabal and what we're doing. But as I mentioned, we are doing this specific live conversation in partnership with the Rundown. And the Rundown is a modern media academy combining the precision of algorithms with the creativity of humans. As the media landscape evolves at pace, the communications industry needs to move fast, adopting an ethical storytelling framework for the modern age. The opportunities and challenges of AI are immense and nowhere more than so in Africa. The Rundown is a world-class modern communications training academy, teaching the core values of storytelling in a world revolutionized by artificial intelligence, virtual reality, blockchain. A vertically integrated, affordable learning platform designed to cover the needs of modern media and communication specialists in emerging markets. That's the Rundown. And I subscribe to their newsletter. I believe they have a newsletter too. I've been subscribed for a couple of months. I read it every time it comes out. So it's really interesting. Please sign up to the Rundown. And you can really get to know everything you need to know about AI. Now, so we've spoken about AI a lot. I think everybody, if you're on this call, we've all seen how AI plays into, if it's from simple conversations like using ChatGPT to apply for jobs or to, write that copy that you don't really want to write, or even, I think there's an interesting AI use in Canada where one guy is using AI to interpret the cries of babies. AI has interesting use cases across all sectors. But in Africa, what does that look like? What's hampering us? We don't have enough AI policies. As we met, there's a report that says only 7 African countries have AI policies. What can we do about that? How can we implement better policies? How can we make sure that the data we are using doesn't affect us in any way or only promotes the success of the continent? And today with me, I have 3 very brilliant AI experts who are going to be speaking with us about this. First, there's Zain Verjee. Zain is the co-founder of The Rundown, a modern media academy. We've spoken a little bit about The Rundown, but I'm going to speak a little bit more about Zain. She's the executive producer of Unstoppable Africa 2022 and 2023, presented by the Global Africa Business Initiative. This was a 2-day gathering on the sidelines of the General Assembly with the team When Africa Wins, the World Wins. She's also experienced as a former CNN anchor, State Department correspondent, who helped shape Zain's global relationship. Welcome, Zain. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, Timmy and TechCabal, for having me. And hi to everyone. Thank you so much for watching this very important conversation. Timmy, you forgot one bio item for myself, which is failed entrepreneur.
I feel like that's what
sounds very good, but I know how hard these guys have been working, so I respect them for the success they've had, and I'm really looking forward to hear what they have to say in their conversation. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Zain. Next, we have Clinton Oduor. Clinton is a machine learning engineer and head of data science at Amini, a Nairobi-based startup building Africa's environmental data infrastructure. His work harnesses the power of AI and Earth observation to find solutions to some of the most pressing and urgent environmental challenges of our time. Prior to Amini, he worked at Edge Impulse as a developer relations engineer and co-founded Rhinos Lab. Welcome, Clinton. I think Clinton is an entrepreneur, so hi, Clinton. How are you doing today?
Hi, Timmy. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here and looking forward to this amazing conversation. Yeah, thank you.
Last but definitely not least, we have another entrepreneur who has done really amazing stuff in AI. We have Megan Yates, who has a decade of experience with the field of data experience. In 2018, she founded Zindi, Africa's leading data science and artificial intelligence competition platform, which hosts the continent's largest community of over 60,000 data and AI practitioners, solving some of the world's toughest challenges. Now, if there's anyone that's probably going to bring Africa to the forefront of AI, it's definitely Megan. Hey, Megan, how are you doing?
Hi, Timmy. It's really good to be here. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the conversation today. Obviously, I think a lot of what we're going to be speaking about today is very close to my heart and close to what we're trying to achieve with Zindi. So yeah, I'm very excited for the conversation that's coming.
All right. So that's everyone that's going to be on the panel. You're going to be hearing from them very shortly. I'm going to run down how this conversation is going to go so that we're all clear on our rules. So we're going to have a 5-minute introductory session, which is what we're doing now, where I talk and, I give everyone phonetics and introduce the guests. Then the next 25 minutes, Zain is going to have a conversation with Megan and Clinton about AI in Africa and what that looks like. After that, we're going to have a Q&A session where we answer questions anyone on the event might have. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A box so Zain, Clinton, and Megan can see the questions and we can answer them when we get to the Q&A session. So finally, there's Victoria in the chat box. Victoria is my colleague from TechCabal. She threatened me yesterday to host this, so be very afraid of Victoria. Victoria will be in the chat box answering any questions, any other questions you might have about the event or about TechCabal or about the rundown. So please reach out to her. Victoria, if you're there, please say hi to everyone in the chat box. And yeah, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to be handing over to Zain now so that we can kickstart the conversation. Hi, Zain, over to you.
Thank you so much, Timmy. Appreciate it. I'd like to start by just setting the scene a little bit here and talk a little bit, if it's all right with you, on what exactly do we mean when we say data nationalism, okay? I think it's just important to give the conversation that context. So from my perspective, data is the new currency. Data is the new gold. Data is the new cobalt. Data is so important that whoever owns data will command and control the highest and the best terms, and they will dictate the direction of the world, of the region, of the countries. So it is absolutely critical that we understand this conversation, and we understand that when countries sell their data, they are giving up an enormous amount of power and an enormous amount of opportunity, and they're opening up citizens and themselves to exploitation and to a new kind of mercantilism. So by definition, data nationalism is when a country keeps their data within national borders and under national control. So Kenya keeps its data, it controls its data, it manages and processes its own data. South Africa, same. Niger, same. So the entire continent is responsible for data localization. That is another expression used in lieu of data nationalization, right? And laws and regulations become really important. So why do we care about this specifically for our continent? Well, because there are 3 key factors to understand here, okay? One is data sovereignty. We need to control and own our own data to protect our citizens, and we must not be reliant on foreign entities or foreign tech, all right? The second reason is about privacy and security. You don't want your pieces of data sold to China or the US or to another country around the world that's going to know what you're buying at Carrefour, what road you take, your preferences, your consumer behaviors, what goods are coming into the port of Mombasa. You have to protect and secure data, and it's on the onus of our African leaders to make sure that we are protected and our sensitive data does not come under foreign influence. The third piece, and I think that Megan, you probably really see this on the front lines here, and Clinton as well, is that by ensuring and protecting our data in our own countries, it creates jobs, it creates opportunities, it supports and encourages local tech infrastructure. So it enhances economic development, and it creates a lot of new opportunities when you start keeping the data within our own borders. Otherwise, what we are dealing with is a new kind of colonialism, okay? And it is about data in Africa. You give your data to another country, all right? That country or entity or tech platform takes it, structures it, processes it, labels it, packages it up, and sells it back to you for a higher price, okay? That is what data colonization is. You get raw, cheap data, you sell it to foreign entities, they get a lot of information about you, and they sell it back to you. Sound familiar? So this is something that African countries are thinking about, the African Union is thinking about, and we need to be thinking about. And just because we have these big words, data nationalism and data localization, what we have to do here is take it to a granular level, that we understand what is it that we need to do as entrepreneurs, as innovators, as individuals, as leaders of our companies. How do we make sure that we are creating the right types of data sets that are ethical, that are African-centric, that we own, that are removed from biases, and where we can protect our security? So, okay, that's it. That's just a lay of the land, okay? I'm so happy to speak to both Megan and Clinton. Megan, let's start with you. I mean, you are at the core of a lot here, you know, talent development, leveling up talent, connecting talent. How do you see the issue of data sets and data nationalism?
Yeah, so I mean, that's actually why we created Zindi. So more than, I don't know, a lot of years ago, I was working in several African countries building AI solutions for companies and trying to be an African organization building those solutions. And what I found working on the continent is that a lot of executives in leading organizations, you know, financial institutions, insurance companies, etc., across the board, their go-to would be to hire international companies. I mean, the narrative's definitely changing, but a couple of years ago, they did not see any value in local talent, local solutions, local infrastructure, and everything gets outsourced out of the continent. And so we started seeing that trend happening. I mean, this was close to like 10 years ago. And we thought this is wrong. We don't like what's happening. This doesn't make sense for Africa. And that was a lot of the reason of why we built Zindi. We want to use African data. We want Africans to solve African challenges. And we want local talent to get recognized for the brilliance, you know, that exists here. And, you know, the real issue is, you know, companies not even recognizing the talent, not putting, really not putting development into local talent. And this, you know, this narrative of like overseas is better. I mean, we have to change that. And for us, you know, the way to do that through Zindi was to really showcase incredible solutions built by Africans on the continent solving their own problems. I mean, we don't want a situation where, you know, people are coming to the continent and solving problems that we have. You know, it doesn't make any sense. And even through a lot of the work I was doing, I also saw that they don't understand local context. I mean, I'm obviously only from one African country, and there's so many different cultural differences across the countries. But, you know, they don't actually understand the local context at all. And so I don't see a way for external consultants from other parts of the world to come to Africa and really solve challenges, because they don't understand the landscape of, you know, and the, you know, the world that they would be working in. So I see it as crucial that we, you know, I think we have to work in many different ways. There's obviously infrastructure challenges, you know, there's electricity, you know, very fundamental challenges like that. But I think it's up to us, especially as a tech community, to really say, like, this is the future that we want, and this is how we're going to get there. And I also don't think it's up to governments to do it on their own. You know, it's got to come from us. And I think part of the problem is what I see in governments is that they don't really understand all of the implications. So you speak about, giving data away and things like that. I don't think, from my understanding of many politicians, I don't think they even understand how that data could be used in 10 years' time. I think a lot of people building AI models, I think Clinton would probably say the same thing, that, what you can do with that data is extremely powerful. And I would say that a lot of politicians don't even understand the types of things that they can do. So I think it's up to us to have these conversations as a tech community and speak about what this actually means for us, and say, as entrepreneurs on the continent, what can we do together to make a change?
And I think to underscore that point, Megan, I mean, look at what happened. And Kenya is actually a good example here, where OpenAI was totally exploiting Kenyans, predominantly from poor regions and places like Kibera, and paying was it $1 or something a day for a significant amount of data, and only for a period of time, and then they were bounced. So that is what we need to avoid, and there is a lack of understanding as to what the implications were for doing that. And actually, it was also unethical and exploitative on the part of OpenAI. Clinton, you are a data scientist. That makes you the cleverest person in this room. So tell us how we fix this. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But from a data scientist's position, and understanding all the complexity of machine learning and deep learning and training and compute and all the problems that we have, how do you see how an individual, how the people in this room on our continent should approach data, and how can we deploy it in ways that are safe and ethical?
Yeah, I think data, first of all, to start with the problem here, data is quite a very big challenge, especially also where I'm coming from. Amini, we set up Amini with one mission to enable Africa to transform the world by enabling our own ecosystem. And our ecosystem here is governments, it's developers, and just individual innovators who want to make some changes to transform Africa. But we realized that it was quite a big challenge than actually we had thought. So for us, we thought even for simple natural data, environmental data that's given to us by God, it's quite a very big challenge for us to track where it is and how it's changing over time. And from people who don't come from AI, usually think AI is this big magic, or you can just tell it to do something and it will do. But the real case here is that AI actually usually just a representation of the data that you are giving it. And if you don't have the data, there's nothing that you're going to get at the end of the day. If you have data that's coming from other areas and try to build an AI system for a particular region, for example, on a localized level, let's say you're building AI models using data from, let's say, Europe or America, and trying to bring it here, it really just fails totally. And you have seen that even with the advancement of AI, where we have the large language models where everybody's now talking about. We are really praising them, how good they are. It's good at translation, but it's only for a few languages. So the real case here that we should be talking about is how do we unlock that potential? How do we get more data into the hands of developers? Because the developers are the ones who are going to build us this magic, but they need this fuel, which is the data. The Zindi platform is there. It has developers to help us solve these problems. But if we don't have data, it becomes quite a very big challenge. And if I can just touch on one of our relationships with Zindi, I'm not quite sure whether Megan, you are aware of it. We recently partnered with Zindi to launch a competition on Zindi that was totally just aimed for data collection and not just building models. Because we realized, of course, we will have problems that we want to solve, but we don't have the data to start. So we are trying to answer the question of can we use citizen scientists, just general people? It's not a must for it to be a person who is that much knowledgeable in AI, but just people that might be interested in contributing data for innovators or for developers to build on top. So I think it's quite like a very big challenge that's going to require like some sort of a multifaceted approach. It should not be changed by just an individual. It's about like even the governments themselves, the private sector. How can all these people from the ecosystem, the entire ecosystem, come together to try and address the problem? Yeah.
From the experience you've had, Megan, with the hackathons, with all the conversations with the talent and the developers, what would you say stands out as some of the key ways to get more data in the hands of people like Clinton and anyone here listening and trying to figure out how do we get this? Do we go for volume? Do we go for niche? What language do we get into, and how do we collect it? How do we record? What are your thoughts, and what have you observed?
Yeah, I think again it's
No, Megan.
Megan, sorry.
So will probably say something. So
Buddha.
I think involving community is really crucial, and obviously the partnership with Amini, we've done that. It's like really building community around these challenges and including more people. I would say at the moment Zindi tends to be people who build models, but what I loved as a side effect from the Amini challenge is it actually got data scientists into the field, and they were like, wow, they actually they weren't behind their computers just coding, which was really cool, because then like they actually got to see more real problems and how data would be collected. But I think community really plays a crucial role here. We've seen so many positives just from people solving challenges together, people wanting to come together around the challenges. Obviously Zindi caters more for data scientists, data engineers, people doing that, but I think we can look for ways to include more of a broader community around data collection, and I think it's definitely needed.
If we can get granular about the collection for entrepreneurs in this room trying to figure this out, like how would it work exactly? Like just break it down. Clinton, you tell us. Right? Because if people want to start going out and collecting things from their village and recording oral culture and doing it in Kikuyu or Luo or our local languages, how do they, like, give me a step-by-step. What does it look like?
Yeah, so it first of all starts with like the objective that you want to tackle. First of all, like why do you need the data? Where is that data like located? Like which is modality usually used to collect such kind of data? Because like when we talk about data, most of the time we usually think just about like the digital data that's mostly generated by social media platforms, like about our behaviors, how we interact with the internet, which has been somewhat good because like social media and internet, generally smartphones has really penetrated well into the country, and a lot of data into the continent, and a lot of data is generated by people even without them knowing like the use of the data. Some even don't know like which is the biggest business model for Google or Facebook. They're usually among the most valuable up there. So, but when it comes to some kinds of data that's not collected in such ways, these are data set that you must be present physically somewhere. For example, you want to collect like data of a particular environmental state, something like what is grown in this area, like what does it look like? So for example, to give some context, at Amini, we usually deal mostly with environmental data. And one of the key challenges that we want to unlock, especially for smallholders, farmers, is to give them like access to the financial services. Because like these are people, first of all, who don't have like any collaterals that they can show like the financial institutions to give them like credits or insurance. But they have been practicing something like agriculture, farming for quite a long time, over years. So the question is like, how can we use like their natural capital instead as a collateral for access to these financial services? So take a case whereby if I know this farmer has been planting something like maize for the last like 10 years, can I assess like the productivity of that farmer to see whether I'm going to bet on him or her in this season? Because like they get most of their money or most of their income through agriculture. And the challenge with that specifically is that you need to build something like models for predicting yields. And for you to build like a model for predicting yields, you need like a historical yield data. And this is not just data that, first of all, is very imaginary. It's data that you must get from the farm, or you must get from the ground. You must go there to collect it. It's not something that you're just going to take like some sort of a picture, let's say like a picture, or it's not something that you're just going to trust somebody, for example, and ask him or her like, what was your yield for the last like 10 years? First of all, most of them don't have this record. They don't keep records. So it's really like a very complicated process. So for example, for this case, what will be needed is that you'll need to roll out some sort of a campaign, which involves like monitoring the farm for the entire season. For example, you go at the start of the season, see like how the farm is progressing, go again in the middle of the season, see how the farm is progressing, go again at the end of the season, see how the farm is progressing, and have like this record somewhere. And this data is one that you're going now to build like your machine learning models to see whether you're going so that let's say like insurance brokers or the banks can see whether with the predicted yield, they're going to give somebody like a credit or not. And again, like because it's data driven, you must be extremely, again, very careful to make sure that at the end of the day, you're not being biased. Your model is not being biased towards like some particular farmers because they just, let's say, because they are found in a particular region. So for you, for example, to cover for the entire Africa, because like something like agriculture usually like very localized based on climate, weather, and many other variables, you need to have like a well-representative data. You need to have data from all these regions. So at the end of the day, you realize that number one, it's very expensive because you're going to survey all those farms 3 times a season. It's just quite expensive. It takes like quite a lot of time. And again, sometimes going to explain to the farmers why you need to collect the data, sometimes it's also like a very big challenge because number one, it might be because of language barrier. Yeah,
Right.
and just many other challenges, yeah.
Right. That was very insightful. And I really appreciate you breaking it down that way. I'm interested in just Megan picking up on a couple of those points, because all the things you articulated, Clinton, I don't want people to think, well, you know, I can't do data. This is too hard. I can't do it. You know, you need to make the jump to certain new skill sets, or just be open and learn. And I want to ask Megan, you know, how should people prepare on our continent for an AI era? And what are the kind of skills that you're seeing from your work at Zindi that we need to just understand at a basic level, and then get a little bit more sophisticated in the way that Clinton is talking to us about?
Yeah, that's a great question. A couple of things. I think that obviously, as much as you need people who can build models and are very tech focused, you also need to take like a bit of a broader view in terms of data. What I love about Amini is it's like, you know, it's what they're doing is challenging. It's hard. And they're going out and doing it and collecting, you know, data from the ground. There are apps you can use that crowdsource data collection. A lot of the problems with the apps that exist is they are not African. And so you lose, you know, again, now you're using apps that exist outside of the continent, and then you're getting people that are not African collecting data. Those apps exist because, you know, it's basically people get paid a very small amount of money to put data in or do a translation or whatever it is, some task. But the issue then again is basically like you missing all of the context, you still increasing, introducing bias, etc. So you still have the same issues with a lot of those. But in terms of the skills, I mean, to me, what's really important is having the view of what data you need to collect to do things. And a lot of the work that I've done with organizations is they don't really understand what they need to start collecting to build for the future. So it's not just about hiring people that can build models and, you know, do all the data pipelines. Like, sure, you need that, but you also really need to have the broader view of, you know, what are you actually going to change now in your organization? What do you need to be collecting? Because as you started off, you know, with the introduction, data is the currency and it's the king, but you need to understand what you need to start collecting. And I think a lot of organizations is like they kind of understand what the problem is, but they don't understand, they can't break that down into like, okay, I need all of this data to be able to do that. And so it's more like you need the person that's like, I think in some organizations I've seen it called like a data translator or something like that. It's like somebody who they understand the model building, but they also have the view of like, to get there, this is what you need to do now. And I think that for me is like this crucial skill right now.
You touched on something, and Clinton, I want you to comment, because this is really at the crux of a lot of the problems that we're trying to solve, which is the use of third-party platforms, right? And like you said, like, you know, we get stuff that's off the shelf and we skin our product over that, or, you know, we participate in some way with very limited context. There's the Africa bit, right? But anyway, when we use these large language models or other or models that are from third parties, how do we solve this problem for ourselves? Because we don't have large language models that have been developed on our continent yet. We don't have the compute. We don't have the engine yet, because Zindi is solving this problem, but we don't have the volume of the engineering talent that's required, the infrastructure, the hardware. So how do we handle this? I mean, is the only solution to write our own code?
Yeah, I think the entire process is just not going to take, for example, in us, it's going to require like some sort of collaboration, and we should always think about it as like some sort of an ecosystem. For example, we have people who can write code, for example, on Zindi. We have people who can help us like collect like this data. It can be like a private institution that understand like the localized context that are based in those local areas, that they understand like the people and they understand the problem, their data, the people that are getting the data from, and how to collect it. It can be also through governments. Government should also like spearhead this to ensure that they come up with policies and regulations that ensure that data, the economy, for example, is digital. A lot of data is generated by people, even though like, of course, we need like some sort of guardrails to ensure that the data is going to be used in the right way. So it's not like something that we are just going to solve alone. And for example, if you look at the current advancements, we have talked about LLMs. Everybody is talking about it now. Before this, like the biggest challenge, for example, for African NLP, if I can give an example, was like where are these algorithms that we are going to be using? But for now, that's no longer like a challenge.
NLP stands for natural language processing. Yeah, just explain it.
Yeah. Okay.
Go on.
The NLP stands for natural language processing. So like before that, like we had like a lot of research groups, for example, Masakane, that I was trying to solve this problem. And a lot of effort was really put on algorithms, coming up with algorithms. Somebody will be wanting to solve like just a particular problem, let's say like us translating English to Swahili. When you go to another place, somebody again want to translate English to a specific like a local dialect. And you'll realize that a lot of effort was mostly put on the architecture, the algorithm that the data needs to feed on, because like technical wise, we weren't yet there. But due to like a lot of advancement on open source, algorithms and architectures are no longer like a very big problem. There's a very high chance that 95% of developers just use the same algorithm or the same architecture to solve the same problem. What brings the challenge, or what brings the difference, is like the data that you're feeding like these algorithms. So like today, algorithm is not a problem. The problem is like where do we get like this data to feed these algorithms that already exist, that people have already proved that they work really well. And a lot of people have been trying to solve the problem, like people like Lelapa.ai, that are trying to build like localized like language models for African languages, which is great. And I think the rest of the ecosystem, people who are not actual builders, should be finding ways in which like we can support people like Lelapa, for example. How can we bring like all those local dialects that we talked on the village, for example, to bring them like digitally? And most of it might not be like, some of it, a big part of it might not just be on individual efforts. It might take also the assistance of the government to help in that digitizing like a digital handwritten records that have been existing for the past like 50 years and things of the sort. Yeah, so it will take some sort of an ecosystem, not just one person.
You reminded me of an organization that we were in touch with at the Rundown a few weeks ago, and I encourage everyone just to look at their site based on this conversation. The company's called Lesan, Lesan, and they were looking at sort of multilingual natural language processing models in Amharic and so in Ethiopia and Eritrea, and the way that they were doing it was very interesting, and I think that they were also wanting to engage with East Africa in particular. So if anyone is listening that is doing that kind of work, do look at them. I think that that's quite important, and a really important point you're making about linguistic diversity, which means when we lack our linguistic diversity in models, it instantly brings in lack of context and more bias. Megan, on the jobs changing piece and on the talent piece, we had a very interesting conversation at the Rundown with Anish Raman, who is the Chief Economic Opportunity Officer at LinkedIn. And he was saying that, you may not be doing anything today. You may be sitting at home, going and doing your job, or going to the office, or working from home. But you don't know that at this very moment, your job is changing. It's not a fear thing, right? It's that it's in the process of transforming. And we on the continent need to make our moves right now and make sure that our knowledge and the frameworks and the environment, as Clinton is talking about, is in place so it can enable all the skills and the development that are needed. Actually, I want to cite something here, you guys. He said 75% of knowledge workers today are using artificial intelligence daily, from a study that LinkedIn did with Microsoft, and 68% of skills associated with the average job are going to change by 2030. Okay, and that was a global analysis, which is why, Megan, what you're doing is so important. The other piece, and this is what I want to come to with you, is that they argue that technology and AI is moving at a breakneck speed. We understand what's happening, or we're trying to. But let's not forget the human in all of this, Megan, that actually a human being, us, we have empathy, we have creativity, we have nuance, we have compassion, we have these communication skills that should not be discounted because we're also, dealing with artificial intelligence. So in your training and in the work that you do at Zindi, how much do you emphasize the importance of the human first? Are you pro-human?
Are we pro-human? I mean, definitely. I mean, what we've tried to do at Zindi is showcase just incredible people that have great technical abilities and get them jobs. I would say, I feel like from all the work that we've done, I mean, all the AI is only just helping people move faster. We've actually recently done skills testing for people getting jobs, and the employers are actually saying that they are happy with the candidates using AI in the skills testing, because if they can use AI effectively, I was kind of shocked, because I was like setting up this whole test where they couldn't cheat or do anything. But yeah, it was basically seen as a positive if they could use AI effectively, pass the skills testing really well in a great time, like no problem. So to me, it's really enhancing it. But I think that, there's so much obviously in understanding data, how it's used, and how companies are interacting with people, that you need humans involved. I mean, I've got lots of funny cases from projects I've seen and that, but I mean, you need somebody, to say, is this real? Yeah, you need a oversight. Yeah.
And also that comes to the core of the human is there. There are important roles that humans can play. Obviously, we may get back our time, and AI is doing a lot of our work, but it frees us up to then focus and do other things. I feel like I'm hogging up this conversation now, Timmy. I would love to open it up to anyone who would like to ask our panelists a question, or would you like me to keep going? Because, you know, it's an occupational hazard. So, Timmy, what would you like? Shall we open it up to Q&A?
Yeah, we can open it up to Q&A in 5 minutes, but I think you guys can wrap up this conversation because I mean I'm actually enjoying this. I think we can.
Okay. So we want to think big, obviously, but Clinton, some of the people that we've interviewed on our side have also told us think small, right? Don't necessarily think of the large language models and all that compute and wahala and all that we have to get involved in. Maybe we on the continent need to be thinking much smaller and looking at small language models to support our work. What do you think about that? And give us your insights with your experiences.
Yeah, I think generally at the end of the day, it's really like what problems do we need to solve and what is needed to solve like the problems. For example, on the topic of small language models, I really think it's a very good idea, especially for the target for the, let's say, the African continent case scenario, because of number one, like resources, you need like clusters of GPUs. We don't have like 36,000 or more GPU that, for example, Meta have to train like these large general purpose models. Sometimes we just don't need like the general purpose model. Sometimes we just need some sort of a translation model for just one language to solve like, let's say, just one problem. We don't need to build like a GPT-4 scale model that's 150 billion plus parameters. Sometimes that's just a problem that can be solved with very small models of, let's say, 1 billion parameters. We look at where we want these models to run. We don't have sometimes, again, the resources, again, to host them in those big servers. In some cases, we want them to run offline without needing like internet access. These are models that can run on smartphones or just small edge devices. Again, like small language models, like really solves that quite well. So on this, I'll really just say like when we are tackling problems, we surely just for example, as technical people, we usually have one problem. We just want to do something to smile at it, say like, we have really done this. It's so it's a billion parameter. Sometimes just 1 billion parameter solves the problem. Yeah.
Megan, how do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I really like that idea of like thinking small. And I think, I mean, what we could look at is, you know, helping, you know, there's obviously thousands of data scientists working in startups and large organizations and almost doing this is what kind of a best practice looks like. So in terms of, you know, keeping data here, doing this, doing that, like this is what a best practice for a great future for the continent looks like in your work as a data scientist. So it's kind of like showing data scientists what, you know, what decisions come up, how they could view it, what kinds of things they could look at, factors to consider when they're choosing platforms or whatever it is. You know, I think that would, you know, really help the community in making the decisions because you have thousands of data scientists, you know, building models, working on solutions, deciding on data, helping organizations build data. So we need to look at enabling them to make those decisions, number one. And then obviously number two, you know, I mean, my question maybe back to you would be, you know, how do we as a tech community, I don't know if I'm allowed to do that, but how do we as a tech community, you know, with the knowledge and understanding of the power of data, how do we help our decision makers and governments, you know, make better decisions? Because we would sit here and just be frustrated, you know, in the work, or we see governments doing things like, how do we as a community mobilize to do that?
I think actually this is a great question. I will sort of offer some thoughts around that. You know, I mean, our leaders need to lead on this, right? Not sell our data off to other countries and not prioritize this, right? And even the African Union as a whole is writing a continental strategy on all of this kind of stuff, but that takes time. I think there are three important things that African leaders have to be looking at, okay? The first very practical thing, guys, could be something like appointing a cabinet secretary, you know, that is responsible for national data. And that's the job, okay? Maybe at that level. And that's, you know, there's a misinformation or a disinformation unit. It protects citizens' data, and, you know, it makes sure that we're secure as a country and our data is not exposed or compromised. You know, elections can get compromised when you're selling off data and information like that. You know, think about the chaos when you're going to JKIA or, you know, whatever airport. You know, airport boards can be compromised. So, you know, a cabinet secretary at that level focused on national data protection and enabling what we're all talking about here is critical. I think what Clinton said about owning your own code base, you know, that's absolutely critical, you know, and not looking at third parties only. And also what happens is governments, you know, or companies and countries, they, like you said, Megan, like bring in the foreign entities to come in and advise us and all that. So what's happened in the past is a lot of foreign entities come in and they structure our data, and then they have our data, right? So a lot of experts sort of counsel against that, and that we should be investing in building our own small language models. And then I think the last thing, probably one of the most important things at a national, regional, local level could probably be what Zindi's doing. You know, you have to create a national education program. Okay, we have to empower our populations, explain the importance of security and data protection, and we don't just give it up, right, easily like that. We have to invest in national training programs that empower talent. And we all love this statistic: 1 in 4 people in the world by the year 2050 will be African. A talent is here, you know. So I think looking at that macro level to set that tone is really critical for our success. So yeah, that's that's an important point to make. Megan and Clinton, what do you see as, I'll start with Megan, at Zindi and in the hackathons and with all the work that you're doing, what are the leading, most cutting edge innovations that you're seeing? Like what are some of the things that may have surprised you? You know, like key problems that are being solved that you didn't expect, and you thought, wow, you know, yeah, we should be leading as a continent, and that's what we're doing. We're creating something that can bring us wealth. We don't want to be the users of everyone else and create their wealth. We want to create our own wealth. What are you seeing, Megan?
So with the work we're doing at Zindi, firstly, I mean, Zindi's created a home for African data scientists, data engineers, tech people, anyone working with data, and people are incredibly proud to be part of the platform, be on the platform, and to be solving problems together. We don't not allow people from outside the world, you know, outside Africa, but they come in and they generally work with Africans. They can team up, they can create teams and things. So there's a lot of pride. I think African tech people want to be working on the continent. I think there's a lot of a drive to actually, you know, there's so many entrepreneurs. What I love from Zindi is that people have actually often used prize money that they've won through the challenges to start their own businesses, you know, and actually, you know, grow their own companies, which I think is really cool. But in terms of like the actual models and the details, Clinton mentioned a little bit earlier, but what's really interesting, obviously, you know, we have the live leaderboards and it's very competitive, but then we do code review of the top solutions. And what I find really interesting is and Clinton mentioned this earlier, it's not always the models that set people apart. It's how they use the data. It's the feature engineering. It's that part of it that often is like the winning formula in a lot of our challenges. I mean, obviously the challenges range different data types. You know, we do natural language processing, finance data, health data, like everything you can imagine. But often, you know, that's really what sets people apart, which is really interesting. And then the other thing is obviously, you know, one trend is interesting is obviously the compute is becoming quite an issue. So we are putting compute restrictions on a lot of our challenges now because, for example, you know, somebody from another country could come in and just have this access to a huge GPU. The goal for us is to make it like a very fair playing ground. But I think, you know, we're talking about all these issues, and one of the big ones really is infrastructure. And yeah, Clinton's nodding his head. I mean, just try and get GPUs from any, I won't mention any names, but it's hard. I mean, we're setting up hackathons, we need GPUs for competitors. It's a few months lead time to just book GPUs for things like that.
Have you found that any blockchain offers a solution here? Because I know of blockchain applications that offer sort of, if you don't have compute power, you use shared power in the cloud, or there are, have you explored that at all? Is that a thing? Have you heard of that?
We haven't, no. I mean, we haven't heard of anyone, any providers like that. Maybe Clinton has. Clinton, have you heard of anything like that?
Yeah, there are some people from the ecosystem that are really trying to solve that problem in a distributed way, where people are sharing like their own compute resources for a small token than what you'll, let's say, like use from AWS or GCP. Yeah, I think it's a good paradigm.
But I weirdly sell Bitcoin late at night. I sell and buy crypto, and that's how come I noticed that there was a little bit of there was a trend to try and solve this very issue. And I was, again, weirdly buying coins like Nosana is one that there's something around that with compute. Render is another one for creatives, right? Like Render. There's a Bitcoin mining company called BitDeer that is doing something I think is called HPU. Is that it's called? Clinton, help me. And basically sharing compute, right? So I don't know enough to say any more than that, but I was just curious, Megan, and you know I've always wondered whether that would be a solution. But I don't want to take us down that rabbit hole. I want to ask Clinton one more question, and then let's open it up to Q&A. You're doing amazing work at Amini. I just want to say this, and congratulations, and highlight for the audience that what you're doing is really promoting the economic inclusivity of farmers and the supply chain resilience for the continent. And you're pulling your data from satellites, integrating it with other data sets, including sensor, your own direct research, and looking for sort of other sources of information to give insights on biodiversity, on soil, on crop health, and tracking farmers, water, fertilizer, Nini, all of these things. Tell us how it's going. And as a concluding thought, what should be our takeaway from your experience?
Yeah, so it's going on quite well. We have seen like some very good adoption from people who want to change like the status quo. So for example, for a very long time, I've always thought like smallholder farmers can't get like access to financial services, like let's say insurance. It's a real case like in some parts of the world. For example, here in Africa, there's some farmers who are usually ready, start the season, plant their crops, but after 3 weeks, like a very heavy downpour comes and just destroys everything. And the question usually like, should the farmer just give up, or that they should somehow like restart again? So through like these kinds of environmental data, we have like a partnership with Aon, the insurance broker, who aims to give like these kind of farmers insurance based on their natural capital. So it's a very good opportunity, number one, because like Africa is so blessed in terms of our biodiversity and natural capital in general. 60% of actually people living in Africa depends on agriculture, and more than 80% of them are smallholder farmers. So I think it's a very good paradigm that ensures that they are not left behind in terms of access to credit and financial services, which is what has really led to a lot of development in other regions. If there's no access to finance, there's nothing you can do, not just agriculture, but almost in all sectors of the economy. So yeah, that's doing great. So still like the biggest challenge is just the same thing about nationalism that we've been talking about. There's still a lot that we need to work on in terms of collating like these kinds of data. For example, if you look at satellite imagery, for example, up to today, we don't have like any African country or any African organization that has like a satellite in orbit and has allowed people to use their data. Most of them usually closed because of, let's say, military reasons or many other reasons. So up to today, we still depend on satellite providers from, let's say, Europe, and we rely on that. And if it's decommissioned, it means that even the innovators, developers have nothing to work on. So, for example, there is a satellite called MODIS that have been orbiting the Earth for quite a long time, and very many organizations around Africa have been using it for early warning systems and many other use cases. But it was recently decommissioned. What does that mean? It means that the developers has nothing to build on top, and they just need to wait, for example, for another person to launch another satellite similar to that, or we take the responsibility as Africans who really need the data to deploy it, let's say, our own satellites and give it give like developers and builders access to build on top. Yeah.
Thank you very
we really
much.
need to take the initiative. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Megan, Clinton. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, guys. Mia, I will get you to help me with my stuff now, and I will take some some lessons from you both. Thank you very much. Timmy, I'd love to hand it back to you and Victoria to let us know what questions our audience may have for our wonderful panelists.
Thank you so much for that insightful conversation. We have a couple of questions from people in the audience, and I'm going to start with one from Zephaniah. So Zephaniah says, GUSA is involved in sustainable agriculture initiatives. How can AI models built with African data support small-scale farmers in providing productivity, reducing waste, and adapting to climate change? I think this is for Clinton.
Yeah, so I think one thing that distinguishes, like, for example, agriculture, for example, in Africa and other parts of the world is that most of Africans usually depend on rain-fed agriculture, depending on like how weather changes. So they usually predict, for example, within this month, there'll be rainfall. If there's no rainfall, they will somehow postpone their growing season. That will start like planting their crops. And from history, some of it doesn't work well because of, again, the same reason, the challenge of data scarcity. Even in things like weather, for example, if you go to Europe, you'll get like a very good and very accurate weather forecasting models. When you come to somewhere here like Africa, we are not doing that well. Most of the times, actually, you might be told like there's going to be like a very heavy rainfall in the next, let's say, 21 days, and the farmers start preparing, and when that time comes, there'll be no rainfall, or you'll be told that there's going to be rainfall, and when that time comes, there will be no rainfall. So at the end of the day, it's a loss. So there's quite a lot of opportunities for agriculture in Africa, especially smallholder farmers that are data-driven. Number one is to help them like in terms of the right time to plant, the right time to harvest, so that they also ensure that not a lot of harvest is destroyed on their farm. They also, that case of using that data to access like financial services, think of insurance, credit, and the rest, which usually drive like their farm inputs in terms of getting like where do they get seeds to plant and the rest. So there's quite a lot of opportunities, but again, there's quite a lot of challenges that needs to be addressed. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Clinton. Tolu has a very important question. So she says, considering what infrastructure in Africa looks like, how do we ensure that AI solutions built for Africans in Africa are accessible and usable for the intended users, particularly in areas with limited internet access? I'd really like to hear what Megan and Zain have to say.
Yeah, I think I can go, and then Zain can go, but I think it's about understanding the users of a product, understanding how they access information, data, how you're going to contact them, connect with them. There are ways for, when you say AI models, I mean, it could be something like messaging, etc. I've seen that go through radio, go through SMS, just because AI is building the intelligence behind it. I mean, you can still use, a lot of different lines of communication for people in, less connected areas. So I think it's just understanding users and how to, how to connect with them. But I think it's definitely possible, and we might have to be more creative and innovative about how to do it. But it's absolutely possible, and there are lots of projects that do that quite successfully.
I want to underscore that and only add that while we as a continent, we understand what our challenges are. We get our infrastructure problems. We understand we don't have electricity some of the time, sometimes a lot of the time. We understand our problem. We understand, we get it, our connectivity or dramas, I get it, right? But that's going to change. It's that is already changing. And a lot of very exciting things are happening on the continent that's going to mitigate all that stuff. And when it clicks, when we can start plugging into different APIs and using our own models and really starting to unleash our talent, the access and the usability will just be greater, right? Right now, unfortunately, there are these obstacles and challenges. And as Megan is saying, AI has also been around for a while, right? What we're all excited about is our generative AI and the transformer model, the T in GPT, that has changed all of this. And so I think that while we have the challenges, I think taking this opportunity and this time to educate ourselves, to learn, okay, what's going on? What are these guys talking about? Or how can I listen to what they were talking about and apply it? How can I meet with other people and talk to them? I think those are some of the individual steps that we can take, but your point is fair and definitely a challenge.
Thank you. So I have a couple more questions. So I'm going to go with the one from Uyemadu, and it says, I run a startup called Neoform AI that is working on speech AI for Africa. And we've made a lot of progress, but coincidentally, data has also been a major resource that has slowed down our progress. How do you recommend, what do you recommend are the best ethical ways to get the data we need?
Clinton?
Yeah, I think that's quite like an interesting question. And sometimes it usually just means as a private, for example, organization, we have seen, for example, from how other companies like OpenAI does it. Sometimes it means they need to hire like some people to collect that data for them. Sometimes they need to do like some partnership with the organization that already have that data. Because another thing that I realize sometimes it's not that the data usually doesn't exist. The data exists somewhere, but people don't know even its usefulness. People don't know how to share it. And this is one thing, an experience that you have had whereby you are talking to some partners. They say like, we have like this kind of data. And we tell them like, we require this in this format. But when they give you, it's not that format that you requested for. So I think it's quite like, it also might need to take like some multifaceted approach. It can be through like a collaboration, partnerships, and even if you need to collect it directly from people, you need just to indicate like some sort of the terms of use, so that you let people know how you are going to use the data. Because this data exists, for example, for automatic speech recognition. A lot of local or vernacular radio stations, for example, or TV stations have like that kind of data, but sometimes to get them to share that data with builders, usually like the problem. And we should just take like a collaborative mindset, and we might find the data where it exists already. Yeah.
Timmy, if I may just ask Clinton here, like, what's just to add, like, what is the ethical point in all of this? I mean, obviously to disclose, we're going to pay you, we're going to use your data, like, but that's a really important point for us, right? The ethical frameworks in which we as entrepreneurs and as countries are handling this data. What would you say, we need to know? And Megan, feel free, because you probably have all these conversations too. Clinton?
Yeah, so the builders usually know what they're going to use the data for. Most of the times, the people who generate the data, they just don't know. For example, if you come to a place like Nairobi, a lot of small businesses and retail businesses are using TikTok. Like online marketplaces don't work that much anymore as they used to work like some few years ago. If you want to buy something, you just go to TikTok and buy it. And it is just based on your behavior, on how you have been interacting with TikTok, on how how you have been interacting with the internet, for example. But people who are generating this data that's being used for TikTok to do like the advertisements and to sell like their product, people are generating it, they don't know like how the data is being used for. So at the end of the day, actually, maybe some education, we need to come up with some education mechanism to educate like the people, even the government themselves, because some of them also don't just understand how data is going to be used for and the value of the data itself. So it might take like some educational efforts just to tell people like this is the data that we're generating and it's very valuable. It might change or might shift like how we perceive our economy if we want to reach a particular level. Yeah. And we should also be very intentional as builders, not that we just intentional. Yeah, intentional. We should be very intentional. Yeah, about it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Clinton.
Well, I think Clinton's answered pretty well, but I think a lot of education in local languages, making it simple. I think transparency is key. So, making it very clear what they're getting involved in. And I think, that goes back to some of the earlier conversations. It's like only the builders really know what they're going to be doing with the data and how they're going to be using it. And it's up to us to really translate that into a way that's easy to understand, it's transparent. There shouldn't be any confusion or black boxes, or, there's no reason for it really. It could be it is transactional. They're getting paid to do this, but it should be very clear that, they're getting this and this is why they're doing it. And I think we can do that quite easily. It's just that we probably need to put a little bit more effort into, the language and how it's conveyed to the people gathering data.
Thanks a lot, Megan. Coincidentally, I have two questions for you here. The first one is, for a non-tech person with keen interest in AI development, what would you recommend is a low-hanging fruit to get into AI?
So there are two things. Firstly, there are so many great courses. Andrew courses are amazing, and experimentation. So you can easily, you can go into OpenAI and build your own GPT very easily, like experiment, see what works. I'd say experimentation is probably number one. There are so many free courses available. You can do little MOOCs and it's very easy. And then do something practical. So obviously I would invite everyone to come to Zindi. You're all very welcome there. You can go into the finance space in Zindi. You'll find finance related challenges, and there's a lot of practice challenges. So it's not only the big challenges for prize money. There are lots of things to get started. And then again, experimentation is the best. So download the data set, play around with it, see what you can do. And just remember, everybody's learning and everyone's there to help you. You're not alone. Ask questions, get into the discussion boards. There's so many people in Zindi. We've got a huge team of ambassadors that would love to help you and help you get started.
Thank you so much. The next question, how can we stop the brain drain in the data and AI space in Africa?
That's a more challenging one. I think I think that companies on the continent need to look at making they're working for them more attractive. They need to be showing that they're doing great work, it'll be interesting, etc. And we have actually seen that. I think that from a lot of the talent work we've done, when companies show what they're doing, what they're building on the continent, developers and data scientists are very keen to go along and be part of that. I'd say from the talent side, the trend has been, for me recently, developers and data scientists, they want to do something meaningful. They don't want to go into a job where it's just coding with no real impact. I would say the jobs that are most attractive to developers are ones that are going to have impact. So if you're a company that has impact, that is doing something really cool, I don't think the brain drain is an issue. And I see that more and more. I think there's so many companies in Africa doing cool work. And I think that's hugely attractive for data talent.
Zain, do you want to pitch in?
I think that the essence of what Megan is saying and how we're going to retain talent is when companies on our continent understand that the companies are going to win on talent, on the actual people, not the technology, right? They are going to win on ideas, not this pretty little piece of code, which then anyway, the way that AI and the development is going, code will get written. Coders may become more obsolete than we think. So what's going to be left is the talent. So companies will make money, they will make impact, they will succeed with talent, with the humans. So I just think that is where we need to invest. And it's clear to all of us here that it's that kind of creativity that's the game changer. And companies that want to succeed need to retain that talent.
That makes a lot of sense. And with that, we've come to the end of the conversation. We do have a couple more questions, but unfortunately, we don't have enough time to take them. But I do want to thank all our guests. And before I ask them for final thoughts, we have a poll for you to fill. So this conversation has gone on for 1 hour, and we want to know how we did. Did I speak for too long? Is my hair messy?
Uh-oh.
What other topics?
On both. I spoke for too long and my hair's messy. Oh, no.
So Victoria is going to launch the poll right now, and please take 1 minute to tell us what you thought about this session and how we can improve for the next session. Again, thank you so much, Zain, Megan, Clinton. I'm going to ask you guys for your final thoughts, but this time I'm going to give you guys a time limit. Can we do 1 minute? Can we do 2 minutes? I'm going to start with Zain. What are your final thoughts? What are you leaving us
1 minute or 2 minutes?
Let's do 2.
Oh, okay.
I like being generous.
Oh, I thought you were going to be strict now after that. I have taken a very interesting journey that people might have seen me starting as a DJ on Capital FM radio, to being a television news anchor on CNN, to becoming a failed entrepreneur, to becoming now an individual that is very interested in AI literacy and in technology overall, including blockchain and how it can solve other problems. And I have believed that if I expose myself to situations, to conversations, to knowledge that I don't know, that I am uncomfortable around, which I have been and still am, I will benefit and I will grow. And it's okay not to know everything. We're all learning a lot of things right now together, and we're shaping and reshaping. In fact, I am unlearning and relearning and trying to apply that in the work that I'm doing. This has been in collaboration with The Rundown, which is an AI literacy platform that we're building, but with specifically for communication specialists in emerging markets. And that's what it is about. It is about discussing these very issues so we can all learn together, and we make sure that Africa, our continent, we're not behind, we're up front. And anyone who feels uncomfortable, especially young women, I want you to look at me and know that I don't know anything. And I've taught myself, because this is how we grow and learn. And this is how we evolve as people. And this is how we evolve as professionals. An important piece is that when you just try things, you can fail, but you will also take something from that experience, okay? Yeah. We have been building Wanda, and I've been learning retrieval augmented generation. Uh-oh, hold on.
Sorry.
And exposing myself to new technologies, RAGs, Wanda, how can that retrieve our data? Building Pressmate. How can we build a tool that helps communications experts not write the dreaded press release? How can we do that? And by doing that, I've learned, and that's the name of the game, right? You put yourself out there, you be vulnerable, you don't get intimidated by data scientists and the bros in the room. Now that I'm choking, I'm going to stop.
Over to you.
Just when I got on my soapbox. Anyway, thank you all.
Thank you so much, Zain. Clinton.
Yeah, so my final thought is that as a continent, we are not limited by the problems that we have, and it doesn't mean that we can't solve them. We do have the capacity. We do have the capacity not only in the tech communities, we have the capacity in the research labs, in the universities all across Africa. So we do have the capacity to solve some of these problem. What's going to take for us to succeed is going to be collaboration. How can people from the academia, these research institutes, people from the private sector who has the data that want to sell to people, people from the government who have the ability to come up with policy to empower innovation, and locally in the countries come together to make sure that we are successful. So we do have problems, we do have solution to that problem, but all that it will take from us is just collaboration. When we think of it like as an ecosystem and not just me and me only and not you. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Clinton. Megan?
I'm putting my timer on just so that I don't go when Zain said the bros in the room, that really made me laugh because I've had a lot of experience of that. But my takeaway today is just, I think every time we have these conversations, it's so clear that African tech people have an understanding of these issues. They want data to stay on the continent. I think it's now as a next step for us to really think about how we mobilize communities, how we also expand it from just, people that are tech people and people that understand data, to the broader communities. I think we don't want a situation where we only realize the problems when it's too late. And so what's really important is that we actually do that now and we start having these conversations, which is why, this kind of conversation is so important. But if we realize these AI models are not built for us and they don't solve our problems, that's too late. And so we, as a community, need to think about how we come together, how we change the minds of government, how we put regulations in place that work for us as tech people, but also, for solutions.
Thank you so much, Megan. Thanks again to all the guests. It's really been an insightful conversation. I mean, I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone that attended has also learned a lot. Once again, this event is organized by the Moonshot team in partnership with The Rundown. Moonshot is TechCabal's biggest conference that brings together Africa's tech ecosystem in person to network, collaborate, share insights, and celebrate innovation on the continent. So we're going to have a lot of conversations like the one we just had at Moonshot. It's holding from October 9th to 10th at the Echo Center in Lagos, Nigeria. Victoria, please drop a link to the ticket section so that we can get a couple of sales in. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Zain. Thank you, Clinton, for joining us. It's really been an insightful conversation. I hope you have a good weekend. If your weekend starts today, but if it starts tomorrow, I hope you have a good start to your weekend as well.
The weekend starts now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear.
Cool. Thank you so much.
On Sunday.